And I think there really has been truly a seismic shift in opinions, not amongst the general population, but amongst the world leaders over the last 2 weeks. You'll note that in Minsk, there was Angela Merkel and François Hollande from France. Obama wouldn't take part. The British Prime Minister wouldn't take part either, because they know damn well that it's a waste of time and nothing is going to come out of it. And I think this is just they wanted to, at least because Angela Merkel carries clout and the French carry some clout, they wanted to at least give him one last chance to prove that, yeah, maybe there's a possibility. Well, they had that last chance, and we know what the result is. It's a meaningless thing. So now I think you'll start seeing a serious upgrading of the kinds of sanctions and the kinds of support and aid that will come to Ukraine. The next step that's been touted is, of course, cutting off the Russians from the SWIFT system. And to most people, SWIFT is meaningless. Like, well, what the heck is SWIFT? Well, what people don't realize is the whole of the world's financial system, the whole of the world's banking system, loans, etc., runs off of this computer system called SWIFT. And I think most people are aware that most of the Russian oligarchs, and Putin himself even, have funneled off a lot of the state wealth into offshore bank accounts in Europe and Cyprus and, you name it. There's a huge industry to park money that's illegally gotten. And all of this is being done through this SWIFT system. So if Russia gets cut off from SWIFT, that means all of the Russian businessmen, oligarchs, Putin, etc., no longer have any access to the money. And that's going to hurt. Like, basically, you're freezing all of their offshore assets, any assets outside of Russia. And as we know, the oligarchs have been very busy in the past year just getting all of their wealth out of Russia as quickly as possible. So up until now, the sanctions have hurt businesses, it's caused unemployment, it's dropped the ruble, whatever, and it's hurt the Russians, the people, more than anybody else. But it hasn't really hurt the upper strata, the elite that run the country. But by denying access to SWIFT, you are hitting very selectively at this group of people that is causing all of this stuff to happen. The oligarch, the politicians, the Putins of the world. All of a sudden, their wealth is no longer there. Technically speaking, it's there, but they have no further access. They can't move it around, they can't withdraw it, they can't do anything. And that will definitely hurt, and that, I think, may also spur some maybe under the table or backroom talk about how do we get out of this. And of course, the only way you're going to get out of it is by getting rid of Putin. So I think you will see now not only consideration, but I think there will be a lot of arm twisting to impose this, cutoff from the SWIFT system. And that, I think, will really push Russia over the cliff. The other thing is supplying additional arms and military support to Ukraine. And frankly, that has already started to happen. About a week and a half ago, the British shipped off, I think, a couple of hundred of armored personnel carriers to Ukraine. Last week, the Canadian government said that it would supply radar satellite imagery information and data to the Ukrainians, which will be a great tactical advantage because it will enable the Ukrainian artillery, which frankly has been doing most of the real fighting and damage in the Donbass, to more precisely target, Russian army bases, ammunition dumps, tanks, armored columns, etc. So it will give them a much better defense capability. Next month, the U.S. has announced that they are sending 600 armed forces trainers to help train the National Guard in Ukraine. So we're starting to see an opening up of the military support in these kind of ancillary spheres, but I think over the next month or two you'll also start seeing much more tangible aid going in terms of sophisticated military technology and armaments. And I kind of suspect that probably some of that is already happening covertly, through the Baltics, through Poland, through some of the neighbors. Yeah, but NATO or whatever is channeling some of this stuff to their eastern members, and that's kind of entering into Ukraine. Not enough. Yeah, it's got to be much more open to show Putin that, yeah, you want to escalate? Well, we'll call your bluff. We'll call and we'll up the ante. And I think he will soon reach his limit of what he can commit without totally wrecking the Russian economy and not totally, but at least increasingly losing support of the Russian population. And Timothy Snyder had a very interesting comment in that regard. He related it back to Russia's adventure in Afghanistan. They went in overtly. And what happened there is that eventually the casualties started mounting, and at the end of it all, when they finally retreated and admitted defeat, it was because some 16,000 Russian soldiers had died, and that had caused such a ruckus at home that the Russians had to take account into that and cut their losses and withdraw. Well, losses are starting to mount in the Donbass. There's been a minimum, it's hard to get accurate figures, but probably several thousand Russian soldiers have died and either been cremated, buried surreptitiously, or returned in body bags. And as you know, the Russian mothers of these soldiers are starting to protest. Up till now, there has been, these have been in small numbers, and the Russians have deliberately not been sending young conscripts into Ukraine. They've been sending older veterans, mercenaries, criminals, Chechens, people from the fringes. Precisely because of that, because they don't want the bad press of body bags coming home, mothers crying, mothers protesting on Red Square, that kind of stuff. But they cannot escalate things in Ukraine without committing those kinds of forces, and there's a big, big danger, which Timothy Snyder pointed out, and I think Putin's well aware of that. So I don't think the Western world and the NATO forces should be overly scared of the fact that Russia might escalate. Yes, they undoubtedly will, but they can only go so far. There is an upper limit, and they're not too far away from that upper limit. They've probably committed as much as they can without getting overt, without seeing increased body counts, and without seeing a lot more pain than they're seeing now.